Are there any big races this weekend? Find out after the jump.
Trust the Profits is proud to be sponsored by Game of Silks. Go to silks.io to get in the game. Real ownership, real races, real rewards.
Trust the Profits, it's the formula here, and yes, there are some big races with Derby implications coming up. 4 of them, in fact, since the Southwest Stakes got moved back. We are loaded up this weekend with all sorts of things to talk about, and you will be hearing a lot about these races from Trust the Profits content providers for you, including me, the formula. We got 96 days until the actual Kentucky Derby itself. I'll be going through some of my own power rankings, which will lead into the power rankings for the rest of Trust the Profits as well. I'll be touching on Track Phantom because we haven't talked yet since Lecomte. Haven't talked about Lecomte since Lecomte happened. Not that there's a whole lot to say, other than it looked a lot like the Gun Runner. And we've got 4 upcoming Derby prep races, including the Holy Bull Southwest Stakes, of which we do have the entries for, and then we have probables on Robert Lewis and Withers Stakes coming up. And yes, AI graphic of the week, I had to plug in Holy Bull and Southwest to see what happened, and look at that beauty. How about that? Doesn't get much better than that. But yes, onto the power rankings. I've got my top 15 here, and I also have the Silks owners here as well. The Game of Silks owners, proud sponsor, Trust the Profits. You can follow the ownership teams of each of those Game of Silks participants and see which horses are claimed by who. And we'll be having a lot more on that coming at you within the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months, for that matter. But power rankings, you'll see that Nash has dropped off my list. More on that in a bit. Fierceness is still up top. We're going to see Fierceness this weekend. That's going to be exciting. Nisos, we're hoping to see him as well. Not entered yet. They don't have entries in yet for Robert Lewis, but it's expected, I think, by some that Nisos is going to be there. Locked. Track Phantom. Had to move Track Phantom up, of course. Muth is still up there. Knightsbridge. Liberal Arts. Dornach. Got a lot of familiar faces on here as well. There's a few pieces that have moved, but since we didn't have any Derby prep over the weekend, looking back to last week, the big movement here is Track Phantom moving up and Nash moving way down. On that note, Track Phantom, let's talk about that. Small field, 6 horses, so not a huge test, but it should have been wide open for Nash. And I know I've been tooting the horn of Nash for months now. I had him pretty high on my list. I pushed him up a little too high, I think. In Track Phantom, twice in a row. Gun Runner, now Lecomte, knocked him down by about the same amount, right? 2 3/4 lengths. I think it was 3.5 last time. So yeah, you could talk about a little improvement for Nash, but he had the whole race to prove us wrong. So yeah, Track Phantom, Steve Asmussen, moving up the list, looking impressive. His 2 wins. But the other side, the flip side of this is, yeah, who did he beat? Maybe Nash isn't as good as I thought. Maybe he didn't beat a huge talented pool of horses here. There were only 5 other horses in the race, but he did what he needed to do, right? So how good is Nash? We're not exactly sure just yet. Track Phantom. Track Phantom, yes. We're not exactly sure how good Track Phantom is. I can't stay away from Nash, can I? Yeah, it's going to break me. It's going to break me. So yes, Track Phantom, I think you're good. Moving up. Need to see more against better competition. Let's move on to the Holy Bull. What does the Holy Bull mean in terms of the Derby? Well, Holy Bull past winners, recently White Abario, who didn't look that great in the Derby, but has gone on to have a pretty impressive career so far, right? Winner of the Classic, just in this past November. Then we have Tiz Law. Tiz Law looked pretty strong. Yeah, obviously, a lot of people thought he was going to be the winner of the Kentucky Derby in 2020. Didn't happen. Came close. Yeah, we got some pretty impressive horses here that have come out of the Holy Bull in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're on your way to winning the Derby, but competing in the Derby, absolutely, absolutely. Who's in the Holy Bull this time around? Fierceness. We talked about Fierceness before. I would say Fierceness and a drop off. Maybe a slight drop off to Otello, and then I would say a more steep drop off after that, in my opinion. So Fierceness, the winner of the BC Juvenile by 6 lengths, puts him well ahead of this class. We're looking at 8 horses who have entered. Who knows what's going to happen with scratches? This should be wide open for Fierceness. and Todd Pletcher. Otello after that, 2 races, 2 wins, including the Mucho Macho Man Stakes. I really like Otello. Curlin, I think he's good for the distance. 8.5 furlongs here. No sweat for Otello. He should definitely be the second place horse in my opinion. After that, like I said, there's a steep drop off. I think Dancing Groom is an interesting horse here from Vino Rosso. Showed more at the Champagne Stakes, closing for third place. This is a rebound race for him. The race he had afterwards, I believe, was the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. Less impressive. So I'm thinking bouncy back here for Dancing Groom. The other horse on here that I thought was interesting was Domestic Product from Chad Brown. Also would need to have a bounce back here. Didn't look so great at the Remsen. Now, moving on to the Southwest Stakes. Going to Oaklawn. Past winners there. I mean, a couple Baffert horses recently. Um, Talk about Arabian Night. That's a pretty strong Baffert horse. Fell off the Derby Trail right after Southwest Stakes, but looked very impressive in the Southwest Stakes. Newgrange also looked pretty good at the time. It's had a little bit of a resurgence, I would say. Newgrange has Essential Quality. Tapiture is on this list. So Southwest Stakes has produced in the last 10 years some pretty impressive horses as well. Some that have fallen off. But yeah, it can be a springboard for a lot of horses. We're starting to get up into the impressive races here. Now, this field, a stacked field of 12, narrowing it down to 4 was difficult for me. I don't think that you have the top level talent here. You don't have a fierceness in here. Maybe some will argue with me that there is a fierceness in here, or maybe a horse better. But in my opinion, I think there's a lot of horses that are at that next level. We'll start with Liberal Arts, the winner of the Street Sense. I've had him on my list for a little while. Some reminded me to put him on my list, but he's there. Also really like Carbone. I'm skipping Otto the Conqueror. The 2 Asmussen horses, I do like both. I think I like Carbone a little bit better. Maitel, he was a sprinter though, so that does have me a little bit concerned. But I mean, Gates Warrior wins in both of his races so far. I think Carbone is looking pretty special here. Otto the Conqueror, 3 wins and 1 second place in 4 races, if memory serves me right. Running the Remington Springboard Mile previous to that. A lot of people really like him. And then Winstock, maybe not the best Baffert horse, but Baffert looking to grab a win here, as he did in the last 2 Southwest Stakes. So what does that tell you about Winstock? Maybe he does think that this is Arabian Night Newgrange level. I think he's closer to Newgrange than he is Arabian Night. I think Arabian Night felt a little bit more special to me. But Winstock, winner of the Los Al Futurity. Yeah, didn't strike a lot of people as the best Baffert horse. I know in the race that he struggled in, there were some gate issues, some start issues, but could see a surprise from that horse here. But I mean, there's plenty of other horses to take a look at as well. Just Steel, Awesome Road, yeah. But those are my top 4, in no order in particular. Moving on to the Withers, and we're going off of probables and possibles here. These are not entered into the race just yet. At the time of recording, I did not have the entries. Last year hit show, early voting before that, risk taking. See a lot of horses here that placed 5th in the Derby, so not doing too bad, but also not finishing in the money. You get a couple of them that are in that top tier, but not breaking up into the upper crust. Max Player, Tax. Yeah, you get a pretty interesting mix here. You can see the Equibase speed figures a little bit lower for the Withers. I don't know, maybe taking consideration it's Aqueduct in the wintertime? Possibly. And then who's entered into this race? We don't know yet, as I said before, but just looking at the possibles and probables, Speedrunner, I'm going to put him at the top. Speedrunner is listed as probable right now, so I'm hoping he's going to be in. And he looked great at 9 furlongs in a maiden special weight race. Coming from Gunrunner, coming from Pletcher, so yeah, he's got a pretty good pedigree there. When you look at the rest of the field, and I'll include Speedrunner in this, there's no single horse on here that you look at and say, ooh, he blew away some real impressive stakes race headed into Derby prep season. No, I don't think that this is a particularly strong race. There's a couple horses. You look at El Grande O, Linda Rice, does really well in New York. Obviously, Linda Rice, we all know about her her success at Aqueduct and Belmont. This horse finished what, second at the Jerome. out of the money at the Champagne Stakes. So, I mean, you get horses like that that have been up and down, and you're thinking there might be a little bit of a rise here. Flightline, obviously 1F short of Flightline. eh, 3 races, a first place, 2 seconds. So that's a Todd Pletcher horse that I thought was of interest here as well. Sorry, Brad Cox horse. I labeled that wrong as a Brad Cox horse light line. Yeah, you got to correct yourself. So this is an interesting spot to possibly grab some value too. If you don't really like the horses coming out of the big trainers, Seminole Chief was on my list at one point. He looked kind of interesting coming from Jack Sisterton. But yeah, we'll cover these. We'll probably have some full field rundowns where we go through these in a little bit more depth. Ah, yes, This is not the Withers. This is the this is the Robert Lewis Stakes. Got a copy and paste error there. Ignore that for now. But as you can see from this, if you're not Bob Baffert, it's going to be an uphill struggle for you to win this. Medina Spirit, former winner of the Kentucky Derby, with an asterisk, of course. Got some pretty impressive horses on here as well. Moving past that copy and paste error. I'm not going to redo it. I'm not redoing it. I'm too deep into it now. Robert Lewis, who's a possible and probable here. Nisos, as I said before, winner of the Bob Hope. In a romp, obviously at the top of the list here. For him to get defeated, I think would be a significant upset. Other horses of consequence here, I do like Stronghold, Phil D'Amato. Second place at the Los Al. First and seconds only for Stronghold so far. Pilot Commander, also coming from Bob Baffert, also coming from Justify, which is pretty cool. Second place at the San Vincente. Vicente. Not the top Baffert, maybe the 2 in this race. I don't know if he's the 2 overall. We always talk about the 1 Baffert and the 2 Baffert, which is he. Right now, I'm thinking Nisos is the 1 Baffert, right? This is a pretty big field. There are a lot of Bafferts on here. You can go down to Imagination, Wind Me Up, Pilot Commander we already talked about. There's a Yaktian on here as well. Moonlit Sonata. It always bugs me. It should be Moonlight Sonata. Yeah, there's some horses of interest. Mandela's got a horse on here better than Gold. How's he coming along? But yeah, those are my top 3 for this race for the Robert Lewis. And there you have it, Holy Bull in the Southwest. So you can see, fans of racing, fans of Trust the Profits, we've got a big week ahead of us. We're going to be pummeling you guys full of videos talking about all 4 of these stakes races coming up. This is a big one. We're going to have a lot of decisions to make on who the best horses here are coming into this race. And once the races are done, we're going to have to figure out what happened and how that changes our top 10 lists, our top 20 lists. Look out for those videos. Always give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Follow us. And go ahead and follow Game of Silks too. Check that out. They're a proud sponsor here. We're big fans of them. Happy to have them on board. And see you guys shortly.